and they rub it out, change it, and then the next man comes along and you want to change, justify your stance, remove the Chief Justice, and you come. So they have the power to remove the Chief Justice. The Khalifa, the man running the Caliphate, he does not have the legislative power or the divine power to remove the Qadi, the judge who has his eyes fixed on him. He is appointed by a separate board, a separate group of people who are there to scrutinize every single action of the ruler. And this is workable even in 2007. We saw this at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. We saw this at the time of Umar bin Khattab when he was giving his address, when he was appointed the ruler, the Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he said, if I deviate, who will correct me? And this old man, he pulled out his sword and he said, by Allah, I will correct you with my sword if you deviate. Whereas today, individuals, they cannot account rulers in the Muslim world. You can't. You'll be at the least slung into prison, and at the worst, you'll be killed. Where the Islamic judicial system, the Qadi Mudani, he has his eyes fixed. Corruption or any kickbacks or anything, straight away they will be highlighted, and they will the ruler will go into the court of the Mudani and he will be dealt with. So this is, if you like, the judiciary system of Islam working in the present day and age. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
In terms of accountability, every single country in the world is corrupt. Okay? You mentioned the top two, Britain and America. They're all corrupt. But the difference is, when it comes to it, is the big businesses which make the decisions for these people, for these politicians, they have to be patriotic. And that's the first thing we need to get. Is these landlords and so on and so forth, they need to be thinking, okay, what can we do to benefit ourselves, but the benefits comes to this land, not to America, not to anywhere else. And then you've got to look at how you can influence them. That's where you're going to get your accountability, because they're the ones who are investing in this government, and they're the ones that can make the changes. The normal people never make changes, not even here, not in America. So.
I think the solution, if you allow me.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the solution of patriotism really has been washed away. If you look at many years ago, there was a concept of nation statehood. It doesn't exist. Let's just look at patriotism. It deals with problems, if you like, which I disagree with anyway, but for argument's sake, it deals with problems up to the border of that country. But what does it do with the people outside that border? How does it look at them? It looks at them as enemies, as people who can come in to attack. So it needs to preserve its own borders, preserve its own identity. Now, living in a global village, living in a day and age where there is a global village, how does that work? How does it work? So the people of Pakistan will always be looking to the people of Uzbekistan or India or Afghanistan as a threat. That's patriotism. By default, by the idea itself, it causes problems. Forget the practical workings. Islam doesn't recognize patriotism. So we look to solve people's problems as human beings, not as Muslims, not as non-Muslims, not as Pakistanis, not as Saudis, not as British. We look to solving the problem of mankind as mankind. That man, he has organic needs and instincts, they need to be satisfied, they need to be channeled in a way that he does not threaten or hurt the next fellow human being. Patriotism in itself, the minute nobody attacks me, I'm fine. But my view of the world is that everyone is a potential attack on me. And that in itself causes problems. So patriotism does not work, and hence America, the Western world, found that it didn't work. So they scrapped the idea of nation statehood and they've gone to this global village. So really, my friend, patriotism, that chapter needs to be closed, and we need to seek solutions that actually will work for people.
Sorry, if I could just add to that.
Could you just be as brief as possible?
Yeah, the problems here in this country are faced within inside that. And this is how they need to solve it. They need to solve the problem first that is there, that's the issues there. And then they can look outwards to welcome people. I'm not saying these people won't welcome anybody else, will see people as enemies. No, what I'm saying is the problems that are here in this nation, the people who love this nation, it's their problem. They need to solve it. They need to be strong within their own nation first.
That's the beauty of Islam. That the one who lives in Syria, he sees the corruption of Pakistan as his problem.
I see it as my problem too.
Right, so where's patriotism?
What I'm saying, well, my patriotism is in humanity. But what I'm saying is the people of Pakistan need to first come together and say, this is our problem. this is our land, we love one another, and we've got to solve this, and we've got to solve this way. And the big businesses there would think, okay, hold on, this is our land, we need to solve this, we want to grow, we want to be in the part of globalization. But at the moment, globalization is going in a few directions. But if they want to be a part of that, they need to first solve themselves and then grow.
Okay, can I just give that to Lindsay and then we're going to close and move on to the question.
Yeah, just quickly I wanted to say that, I think we're pretty much in broad agreement here that, patriotism is not the way forward. Patriotism, nationalism, call it what we will, but I don't think that, looking at, I live within these particular borders here, I'll look out for my interests. I don't think it really sort of achieves much. You look at the state of capitalism today, you've got huge transnational corporations that have got factories and sweatshops all over the world right now. And they'll just quite happily move a factory to another country if they don't like what the government there's doing in their interests. They'll quite happily move thousands of people across the world so they can exploit cheap labour, which in turn plays into the hands of racist parties like the British National Party, trying to set different workers off against one another on ethnic and racial grounds. And the only way to really take this on is not to appeal to the good nature of capitalists and say, think about it, you're a British capitalist, look after the British people. It's to take the wealth off of them and use it for the good of the majority of the people.
Thank you. Okay, next question is for Ali. How can Sharia law, which comes from a book 14,000 centuries ago, 14 centuries back, be the solution? Do you think that this will take Pakistan backwards?
Good question. This is the effect of the present-day world in the media. I think Sharia law will take people backwards. And this is a perception that's created in the Muslim world. Let's look at some real issues. Let's look at the teddy bear issue. Okay? Great discussion in the broadsheets about how these people are irrational. How are you getting worked up over a teddy bear? Let's look at, there's many issues, the debate that took place in London. In 1924, under the Ottoman rule, Sharia was implemented. In 1924. It wasn't 1400 years ago. Sharia was implemented. The problem is that the biggest problem that we have as Muslims is the image that's attributed to Islam and how Islam can solve problems. Let's look at the cradle of civilization. Where was it? It was in Baghdad. What was being implemented at the time of when Baghdad was known as the cradle for civilization? What rule was it? What system was there? What was Islam? Can anyone dispute this? Can anyone say, no, it wasn't Islam, it was democracy, it was secularism, it was capitalism, it was socialism? Why was Iraq called the cradle of civilization? And now when you have occupation, colonial occupation, it's mere nothing. It's absolutely nothing. Lawlessness. Not even the basic rights for these people. The simple thing about the world today, we tend to forget the history. We tend to forget the roots of some of these discussions. We want to just hide them behind the smokescreen. And this is nothing more than the war on terror, the intellectual side of it, or the cultural attack on the war on terror. It really wants to demonize Islam, that it's incapable of solving problems. It's absolutely incapable of. I get frustrated sometimes when I watch, when I look at the media. And it is intentionally. The media will always pick on the negative elements to portray. Not the negative elements of Islam, but the negative elements of society. So what appeals to BBC media or the Telegram? It's not supposed to say and articulate the views on this issue and talk about how is it possible for nations to fight over a teddy bear. That's not the discussion. BBC will go straight to the man carrying the sword and say killer. And this washes well. This washes well with the program or the series of events that have to be conjured up to give Sharia the backwards, the image of backwardsness. Look at medicine. Who was leading in medicine? Look at technology. Who was leading technology? Algebra. He's the man who invented algebra. He wasn't a socialist. He wasn't a capitalist. He was Muslim. We forget these things. We forget. There was a fantastic exhibition put on in Manchester, the Heritage Centre, about the civilization of Islam.